Good morning, my friends, wherever you may be in the world today. Alan Clements here from Maui, the occupied islands of Hawaii by the United States. Here, September 1st, 2021. Hope you're well. Today's talk, visionary states. I'm apprehensive to use that word, but I'm going to use it. Visionary states of consciousness, psychedelics, including the full range from LSD to DMT to MEO to psilocybin to a range of others. Psychotherapy, the range of psychotherapeutic engagements that are available in the world historically and today, and the role of meditation. For me personally, specifically, awareness-based meditation, more contemporarily, mindfulness-based meditation. And even more specifically, my own background is in vipassana, or insight meditation, primarily in the country of Burma. So I hope you're well. A very spontaneous sharing, complex topic. I'll try to do what I can to make it simple, open-hearted, invitational. These topics, visionary states of mind, from insight to wisdom to astonishment to awe to terror to unthinkable mystery and uncertainty to hypercomplexity. I'm not just speaking about positive states of mind, of so-called unity or harmony or oneness, but states that invigorate radical questioning and invitation, sometimes simultaneously, to adventure into foreign areas of inner beingness within context to, obviously, totality. Visionary states of mind have been a strong component of my adventure over the last 55 years, ever since I first ingested LSD at the age of 15, that led me on this journey, or at least catalyzed this journey to where I feel I sit today, along with a lot of other things. And the role of psychotherapy, primarily emotional and talk-oriented, conversational psychotherapy, the deliberate communication with another for the purpose of investigating and analyzing, if you will, exploring the nature of one's own inner beingness in context to their family, to their friendships, to the world that we live, our choices, our decisions, our memories. Been an active part of my own Dhamma life over the many years. I'd like to dive into it to some extent and speak about it. And coming back to the intersection of meditation, and I notice here in my own mind, I want to avoid, I hope I can avoid, a hierarchical presentation to one over the other, meditation being preferable to psychedelics, some form of psychedelics being preferable to meditation, psychotherapy without meditation being useless, psychotherapy without the use of psychedelics somewhat dysfunctional or limited. And these three intersecting dimensions of, I would call it contemporary transformational presence over the last, 100 years, 50 years, 30 years, 20 years today. These three intersecting dimensions of deliberate / intelligent investigation of psyche, of the subconscious, the substratum, that dimension of being, life, consciousness that precedes conditioning, memory, that is the ocean where instincts abide. It's where the totality of form and life intersect with the moment, that deeper substratum, call it the infinite mystery of being, of life itself. Call it God, call it Dhamma, call it the nuministic, whatever we want to attribute a word to this vast, infinite oceanic dimension that is the source of what we feel and think and taste and touch throughout our days, through the senses, through the body. And to me, that exploration is quite fascinating to prioritize as, for me personally, the raison d'etre of my life. It's not necessarily happiness, it's not necessarily peace. It has a lot to do with exploration, adventure, and freedom, but to make good on the promise of being alive and recognizing our existence and do what we can to make good on the promise of why we are human, why we're alive, what's the reason we get up, and why do we do what we do. I mean, that mystical, spiritual, biblical, religious, philosophical, heartfelt sense of purpose and meaning and identity is the reason why I'm alive, why you're alive, and what will we do with that vocation called my life. And to me, it's the dimensions that have been most powerful and influential. The dimension of the psychedelic. I have a very specific relationship. I don't advocate them to people. I have a very specific research-based experience with them over many decades. Psychotherapy, a long history with both the study of it and the personal engagement with regular psychotherapeutic engagements over many, many years. I'll get into some people that I really have respected and worked with. And then the role of meditation, primarily with the late Venerable Burmese Sayadaw, the Venerable Mahasi Sayadaw of Myanmar or Burma, some of the Mahanayaka Sayadaws at that center at the time, also whom I was blessed to study with and listen to and meditate under their guidance. Sayadaw U Sujata, Sayadaw U Janaka, Sayadaw obviously, and Sayadaw U Pandita. Truly kind of Stephen Hawking-like in their expertise, in my humble estimation, as a neophyte in those dimensions. But individuals dedicated to the exploration of human consciousness on the terms of an experiential engagement, the Dhamma of that engagement, the lawfulness of it is so fascinating. Okay, good morning. I purposely don't prepare so that I can intimately stumble and rumble along the topography of this exploration. I want to know what I don't know, and I want to know what I know, and I want to hear myself in a kind of improvisational virginity, if you will, so that I learn from my own conversation. I call this my own form of self-therapy. It's a little bit more intimate to me than just the practice of meditation in action or being mindful of my thought and my emotions. That's another thing. But a self-therapeutic, self-analysis, self-questioning, self-investigation, self-accountability, that process of self-awakening through the deliberate employment of consciousness upon consciousness in form for the purpose of transforming from consciousness the fabric, the textures, the characteristics that are influenced by greed, fear, shame, worry, doubt, all those disturbing human emotions that cause suffering or conflict to self and other. To me, that's the purpose of the psychedelic, the purpose of psychotherapy, and the purpose of meditation. For me personally, I can't say for someone else, to understand the nature of my own being based upon the study of states of consciousness. That's the main point that I'd like to make here in this first third of this sharing. The study of states of consciousness in the context of their own environment. Consciousness employed skillfully to study the experiential nature, the function, the manifestation of consciousness called you and me, human life. That's the Dhamma, that's the Dharma, that's the yoga of, to me, the intersection. There must be a word that we can create, the intersection or the synthesis of the psychedelic, the psychotherapeutic, and the meditative together. To me, I personally use the phrase world Dharma, the experiential exploration of interiority where it meets exteriority and the confluence of the inner and the outer at the senses, the study of memory, conditioning, action, choice, restraint, patience, love, compassion, the study of states of mind, world Dharma. Okay. Where to dive into this? You know, I had one particular, I guess, early stage life come to an end in 1984. I was 33 at the time. I'd been in Burma for some years. I'd been told to leave by the dictator, Ne Win, on different occasions, just out of the blue, which was a common thing under that xenophobic dictator, to just given 24 hours to leave. And I would leave and I would eventually come back. But in 84, being told to leave again, I decided to disrobe and to leave and return to my own country here in America, where I was invited to begin leading and teaching various length mindfulness meditation retreats in Canada, in California, in Massachusetts, lots of places in the States, in Australia, some places in Europe. And I found it interesting for a number of reasons, not so much to teach. I was never really that interested in teaching. It was more of a sharing in a group communal space to continue primarily my life in Burma in the monastery, which monasteries have their own particular flavor. They're not what we think they are. They're very different environments. I'll get into that at another time. But they're sacred environments, so I wanted to create sacred environments in the West. They weren't retreats or workshops per se back then. They were kind of sacred events that had a particular beginning, middle, and end. And people would come and we would commune, we would hang, we would talk, we would meditate, we would walk, we would live and breathe and emote in silence. I was a young person. I was just 33 at the time, 34, 35. And I had people coming from 16-year-olds, 28-year-olds, 88-year-olds. My father even came to my retreats as a young man. And I was blessed to be in these communal sacred events to explore consciousness in the context of what I've been trained to do in Burma, which was through mindfulness and through the sensitivity. Mindfulness isn't just meditation upon self. Meditation, maybe you know this, meditation is most successfully employed in the context of a sacred environment with a Kalyanamitta. I mean, I don't know how people meditate without a really, it's not even just a teacher or a guide. A Kalyanamitta is a whole other order of human consciousness. These are, I mean, I just came from LA for 3 months dealing with surgeons who are masterful, they say, at dealing with aneurysms of the heart and heart transplants. I mean, these guys are pros. These are like the Tom Brady, using a football analogy, of the heart. And Kalyanamittas are super uber talented women and men who've truly dedicated their lives, like a Stephen Hawking, to the physics of experiential consciousness. And I don't know about you, I'm not an astronaut, but I don't know that I'd want to go out in space without thorough training. And I'd want to know that I was training with someone who really understood the nature of space and gravity and anti-gravity and getting me up and back. And I'll do all the navigation when I'm up, but make sure that I've got a control tower somewhere down here. A Kalyanamitta is control tower. It's like Nassau Central. And that relationship is so, what's the word? If there's a, psychotherapy often implies two at least in an intimate dialogue of transformational presence. Meditation seems to like self-on-self story. But no, it's identical to psychotherapy in that you've got a Kalyanamitta and a yogi. It's a yogi and a teacher kind of psychotherapeutic dance that I don't know how it can take place without two. Meditation is a tandem event. And yeah, you can talk all you want about the power of an isolated self-retreat and this and that, but you can get caught in the cul-de-sac or the whirlpool of your own strange, unrecognized narcissism, fear, shame. It's just so standard, the documentation of cul-de-sac paralysis with yogis. And you see it all the time, especially with those who anoint themselves as self-proclaimed teachers. They're often just, kind of Halloween characters dressed as teachers in denial of their own shadow, their own darkness, and they often preach what they don't do. And that gap is called ethical lapse. And so double lives, triple lives, quadruple lives are so prominent among those who anoint themselves as so-called teachers. But a Kalyanamitta is not a teacher. It's like psychonaut, psychotherapist, a psychedelic assisted, meditatively oriented sitter, guide, support system. I mean, it's the most intimate thing I have ever known in my life. To be a month, 2, 6, 12 months, sometimes longer, in silence, in fidelity with one person, studying experiential nature of consciousness for the purpose, the Dhamma purpose, of truly becoming literate as possible during that period of time with the nature of each of the different SOMs, states of mind, SOCs, states of consciousness. Meditation is the felt, textural, experiential study. What does love, I don't want to hear the word LOVE, talk to me about the texture of love. How does it manifest? How does it feel in your body? The sensations. What do you know as a result of it? Can you truly abide within it knowingly with minimal grasping, or self-referencing as something special about you. All these little amazing nuances. I bring this up because there's such a preoccupation among many. I don't mean to, again, I say this with respect to everyone who's exploring the psychedelic dimension. There's such a presumption towards a state, a visionary state, a breakout state, a oneness state, a harmony state, an awe state, the light, the non-dual, all these state, transcendent states, beyond states, rather than process, insight about process, about intersubjective wisdom, insight about the process of perception upon self, the illusion of self, states of mind, states of consciousness, through the senses, back inside of the body, in the mind, out of the body, noticing states objectively through research. What did you learn from the 12 hours on acid? I was one with that. I've never felt so astoundingly unified. All information comes from the molecule, you know, rah, 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 rah. It's so much more powerful and beneficial than all that meditation that you can do. And people think that they're meditating, not even meditating. This hierarchical thing and the rush towards a state. We all know, primarily, well, I think we all know that the fabric of everything is impermanent. No matter what you think you've attained, the very idea is built upon anicca. And you just change the conditions, you take the acid away, and you're right back to the ordinary pedestrian, kind of dysfunctional, ordinary, pretentious Californian wannabe, just like everyone else who just thinks of themselves as fully enlightened. And all of a sudden, when the acid wears off, the DMT wears off, the ayahuasca wears off, there's no more money in it, whatever it may be, you kind of have a crash and burn moment where you begin to see it's not in the state. It's in the insight about states. It's a wisdom dance. And that process, good Kalyanamitas, and I know you know this, good Kalyanamitas keep you so intimately engaged in the topography of the journey, the process of the journey. Okay, lots of things we can talk about. Let me just move along here. You know, my own psychotherapeutic, going into the psychotherapeutic things, and I've done a lot of psychotherapeutic practices with guides and psychotherapists, whether it be MDMA, with acid, lots of personal research with low dosing over many months. When I left the monastery, I lived in Bali I was in a relationship there with a woman, Janice Girardi, and you know, I would frequently do low dosing mushrooms pretty much 5-6 days a week for months and months and months. Get them down at the beach, dry them, bring them back, and there I would hang in Ubud, right on the ridge up by Myrnies, and write and meditate and do my yoga and explore what I was doing in the monastery, because I was thrown out yet again, and I would explore on the low dose. And it was fascinating to me. The same thing we did back in Vancouver in 2001 to 2005 with my very dear friends, Marcia Jacobs and Dr. Janine Davies. We'd often just do low doses of MDMA. We'd do a little bit of higher doses of the MEO mixed with a little DMT, a little bit of acid, a little bit of marijuana, and slowly meditate. We'd do thought experiments, we'd record, we'd film, we'd write, we'd talk, we'd laugh, we'd cry, we explored for years. I've been doing that off and on for years because it's so interesting to me to stay engaged in the process. And let me just share one insight that I found very fascinating. Now, mind you, having grown up sort of post-monastic life in California from, I would say, 84 up until about 90, 91, when I moved to Australia, then went to the former Yugoslavia where I lived for a period of time. But that 6 or 7 year period based in Marin in Larkspur Canyon was my deep MDMA, deep psychedelic, deep psychotherapeutic investigation through the years of my own meditative training with some of the real great savants I felt at the time in California. I mean, my next door neighbor, 2 doors down, was the renowned psychiatrist John Perry. You might know of him. He studied actually under Carl Jung, I think in Zurich. He died, at the age of, 84. He wrote numerous books. One of the books that really struck me was The Far Side of Madness. And he took me in as a young student and helped mentor me in his understanding of the nature of complex states of consciousness. And he so not only normalized, but saw the schizophrenic and the extreme states of consciousness. And many of you who've explored psychedelics and have explored meditation, have explored complex areas of the world, whether it be displaced refugee camps, war zones, whatever you've done, places where you've served and helped heal nations. It's really complicated to be in your own body and your mind at times. And John Perry, my introduction coming back to California was so traumatic. It was bad enough when I left to go to Burma to get the hell out of America. I was living in Los Angeles. It was just so crazy making for me to be embedded in this conditioning of this carnivore, convulsive capitalism and competition, and the roar, the engine of technology just beginning to break through at the time. Money and power and prestige. It was overwhelming to me to do acid in Venice Beach in 76, 77, 75. And just the roar and the thunder of this capitalistic machine. I'm sure it was in my own mind. But coming back in 84, back to California, after the monastic years, it was even more thunderous to me to feel the embeddedness of competition and pride and the commodification, if you will, of everything began at that point. The commodification of consciousness, the commodification of the psychedelic, the commodification of MDMA, the commodification of sex, the commodification of intimacy, the commodification of psychotherapy. Everything became an exchange. And I'm not going to denigrate the money exchange, consciousness transformation paradigm. But, you have to admit that if you're charging a lot of loot for your transformational plant medicine, yet again, retreat, gathering, workshop, and it's ka-ching, ka-ching, and you've got your bling all around you with your fake credentials, there's something off about that. And there's a bit of a stink right now in the world with the ka-ching, ka-ching, I have to say, around the medicine, the plant medicine, the ayahuasca gurus, the DMT gurus, the Changa gurus, the psychedelic gurus. There are some authentic ones, but the predation and the pornographic nature of the commodification of this stuff is, you gotta either do it freely because you love it or just stop it. And, I've joked over the years, I kind of feel that it's real, but, men in positions of so-called, shaman positions, and it just should take a back seat to the women. Women should take the role of transformational goddesses when it comes to psychotherapy, psychedelics, and quite frankly, meditation as well. Just had to get that off my chest. Thank you very much. Deficit-based psychotherapeutic psychedelic investigation, historical wounds and traumas. And if you go back deep enough and you play out the scream, Art Janoff, no offense, he was a very dear friend of my friend Bob Chartoff. I knew Art very well. He did primal therapy. I knew John Perry very well. I mentored under him. He was my neighbor. I knew James Hillman, a great book, 100 Years of Psychotherapy and Things Are Getting Worse. Leo Zeff, the great MDMA psychotherapist who introduced psychotherapy and MDMA to hundreds of psychotherapists in America and around the world. I knew Terence McKenna, and this isn't about a name dropping. This was that era. There was at John Perry's weekly or bi-weekly soirees. There was Alexander Shlogun, the great organic chemist, and they say the founder of the MDMA molecule. Ram Dass, knew him in Massachusetts. I knew him at Naropa. He came to Burma, of all things. They assigned me to be his meditation guide there. We had long conversations, a very interesting man. Tim Leary, I met in 1990 at the keynote that I gave in Los Angeles for Amnesty International's 30th year anniversary. Tim Leary was there. We had a long conversation about consciousness and psychotherapeutics and psychedelics and meditation and Mahasi Sayadaw, Sayadaw U Pandita, Sayadaw U Janaka. This was the milieu at that time. And of course, my beloved friend Robert Chartoff. And he and I sat for years together, every 3 or 4 months, with a microphone and a high dose of MDMA. And we would just sit there in his Malibu living room and anoint the space with the pointing out of SOMs and the deep, intimate Kalyanamita, mentoring, shared back and forthness, the intersubjective role sharing on a psychedelic in a meditative environment with wisdom and freedom as the priority that we always made together over those years, of those 5 or 6 years of exploration that we taped. It was very fascinating that we made a declaration in the beginning that let our intention to evolve truth exceed our unrecognized attachments to conformity, so that anything was acceptable with respect. And he and I really respected one another. So there's beautiful engagements in the intimacy of two. There's something in life. I come into, it's not just Dharma to understand the nature of lawful components of consciousness, to go meditate in a cave or in a monastery. It's the power of the two. And what we do in that two. It's very interesting to me, psychotherapy. Yes, you can do groups, but the two. The psychedelic, I would never recommend anyone do it on their own alone. The two. And meditation, I don't recommend it doing it on your own, but the two. And what two individuals do consciously through these three very powerful dimensions, the psychedelic, the psychotherapeutic, and the meditative, what you do there is everything. And one of the things that I found most powerful, which I kind of learned to articulate it in the mid-'80s and then eventually began to lead groups based upon it. It was called process-oriented Buddhist psychology. It was a term that I made up. But its root was the integration of the psychedelic, the psychotherapeutic, and the meditative. and to help individuals as best as I could, and to help myself on how to take therapy into yourself to learn the art of the psychedelic-infused meditative psychotherapy on your own being. To take it off of the couch, to take it out of the shamanistic lodge, all of which have their place, to take it out of the monastery. And how can we employ these three time-tested, beautiful dimensions and bring them into a mindful intelligence that we inhabit, and we stay activated with those three dimensions without the need for the therapist, without the need for the teacher, without the need for the drug or the psychedelic. And then when we bring those three, us, to those dimensions, we bring even more of ourselves. And the essence of it was what I called the positive transformational model versus the deficit model of transformation. One, and I used the image of a flower opening at that time, that a flower opens not by examining the darkness between the petals. You could endlessly talk about what needs weren't met and call it shadow and darkness. I mean, you can talk till the cows come home. I'm not sure that that flower will ever open. I don't know that you can ever go so far down into the subconscious to examine every mother and father that you've had throughout time immemorial. I don't think you can satisfy the need to transform by simply looking at family constellations as far back as you can remember, because it doesn't rid the mind of greed, anger, and delusion. It's like saying, because I do a high dose of acid and I become one, therefore I'm constantly one. It may be a diluted one, and you come right back down into multiplicity, and you have to live based upon your uniqueness within this world. But what is wisdom and what is insight that truly elevates freedom, not just temporary freedom? And the positive transformational model was really helping me to learn the high art and to help others. What are the sources of beauty and goodness and light? Ironically, here we are in 2021, the natural transformational therapeutics of consciousness. The fuck pharmacies, fuck vaccines, man. I am so down with the organic Dhamma substance, light from within and light from without, and the intersection of light, the yoga of light. That's meditation. That to me is the psychedelic. That to me is psychotherapy, is the nutrients of knowing how to explore, adventure, assimilate, draw within the nutrients of positive transformational psychic nutrients. What is your light? What is your water? What is your mineral? Your minerals? What is your soil? And occupy the beauty of your being, the most gorgeous states of mind. And let those displace shadow, displace darkness, and eventually the flower coexists with everything. And to me, that model is so powerful, so beautiful, and that is one of the greatest processes that I've learned personally through the exploration of the psychedelic and psychotherapy and in meditation. Meditation really was a dance with your Kalyanamita on how to become more and more truly beautiful, beyond aging, beyond disease, beyond time. You take death out of the equation. You take disease out of the equation. Although you are dying, figuratively speaking, meditatively speaking, psychotherapy speaking, psychedelic speaking, you're constantly being reborn. The flower is constantly opening. Half closed, half open. What will it be? And to me, that is a very important discussion. I feel that the meditative community, the psychotherapeutic community, the psychedelic community, how well do you discern the unfolding topography of consciousness throughout the experience? What did you learn? I think should be the primary motivation of psychotherapy, of meditation, and of the psychedelic. What are you learning on how to navigate consciousness in context to the complexities of conditioning, to instinct, and to uncertainty all around us? And let me close here, and maybe I'll continue tomorrow with this particular sharing, because it's a very interesting one for me. I wish I could do better justice to it, and maybe I will take a few notes tonight and tomorrow and see if I can go dive in a little bit more deeply. I had a conversation yesterday with someone I ran into, and they were asking in a very beautiful way, how am I doing? And you know how that question goes and how that answer goes. It's sort of like as close to the weather as you can get. But I just have a priority right now that my Dhamma is rooted in, I call it Satya, truthfulness. And the reverence to peace, truthfulness, and my reverence, an ongoing reverence for self-peace right now. Because there's a lot of complexity in the world. There's a lot of complexity in my own life, and I know there's a lot of complexity in a lot of people that I know. And so people can feed me, they can bathe me, they can do what they need to, but no one can give me peace. And it's not a stable state of mind, to state the obvious, and it requires unthinkable nuance, doesn't it? And just in a heartbeat, there's an annoyance, a rooster, a dog, a man shouting at his child behind the fence. The wind is blowing too rapidly to walk on the beach today. Oh, there's rain. Oh, I've got to drive again. There's so many different ways in which peace is held in contempt. I dare you want to be peaceful. But at this point in my life, coming back to the conversation I had yesterday, peace is priority. I don't know about you. I refuse to participate in panic, in fear, in pornography, there's still some pretense without a doubt. But peace as priority, a reverential respect for peace. And I was saying to my friend that when I walk on the beach now, I leave everything behind. Everything. It's there. Memory is everything. Memory of my daughter, my friends, my former lovers, the people in my life, the foods, the smells, the memories are there. But I want nothing to do with reflections on that. I want to give myself this gift of pure, present time, transparent, discernible peace. And so I walk on the beach, and the wind now, which I held in contempt for years, it's sort of this organic goddess flow that just, you walk into it, or it's behind you, and it just moves the energy right on through. And it's like, I keep listening, as you know, I've been going on and on about Nick Cave recently, this epic song of his, Pushing the Sky Away. And it's to me, it's now the sky is pushing my hesitancies, my fears, my nostalgia, my shame, my anxiety, everything is just gone. And I'm walking into, and I take my sunglasses, I'm walking into the light. I'm in the light, walking into the future, naked and free. Okay, this is a new form of meditation for me to sanctify my own personal peace. I don't know about you, but it's so easy to contract into the comforts of contempt for the American regime, for the horrors of Afghanistan, yes, empathy. But right now, my compassion, I must say, I'm trying my best to bring active empathy to myself, which is just the high art of psychotherapy, the psychedelic and meditation into my own soul. Drop the work, abide in the light, a reverence for peace. And I said that peace is everything to me right now. It's been a challenging week, and I'm going to end this live stream. I got to resume. I'm writing the details of my will, so challenging. I've got the ongoing details of an advanced directive. I've been told, as you know, and I'm saying it again to myself, I've got an appointment with my cardiac doctor in a couple of minutes, that no matter what happens here, there is no way to prevent catastrophic results. You will die. I'm meeting with the hospice nurse in a couple of days. I'm putting it all in order. I don't anticipate death, but I don't want anything to intrude upon my peace right now. I want open sky. I want to walk freely. I want to breathe freely. I owe no one anything. I just want to be in high respect for everything I've ever done, to be in that quality of peace. And I don't know why I'm even sharing this with you in relationship to what I'm talking about, but the psychedelic, the psychotherapeutic, and the meditative now, I'm looking back at 50, or James Hillman's book, 100, we've had 100 years of psychotherapy and things have gotten worse, sort of satirical. I've had 50 years of mindfulness and the world has gotten worse. But I must say, through my humble declaration of peace, it's worked for me. My Dharma has worked. And I know that in my heart, because I can walk now and sit now and eat now and cry now and be happy now and walk on now and breathe now and die if it comes to be in the next moment in peace. And I think that has come from the intimacy of two, the prioritizing of these two, the dyads of these sacred dynamics. Of course, so many other interactions. But my Kalyanamitas, my psychotherapists, and my guides in the psychedelic. And I feel like I'm in a fruition moment, I don't know about you, by way of saying, pursue your 3 dimensions, whatever they may be. Study states of consciousness. Give everything over to the positive transformational beauty of your heart. Invest in beauty, not in investigating darkness. Give over to the light. And to whatever extent it makes sense to you, may you walk and breathe in the reverence of your peace. Give over to that peace and disavow all narratives, all struggles, all attachments to the mind grab out here today that wants to rid you of your choice of personal peace. Remember that peace is a choice. It could be choices over decades, choices over a lifetime. But keep on keeping on making those choices for peace, because at the end of the day, I mean, I've been diagnosed, I've been told you will die if you do not go through this surgery. And I'm choosing not to do that surgery. I'm choosing to live. And I want that living to be in peace, in the highest, most radiant form of peace that I know. So from my heart to yours, thank you for listening today. Stumbling along in this journey, but so be it. Such is life. Hope to see you tomorrow, God willing. Have a great day.